Hey there, athletes. Coach John Ferry here from Team Wilpers. Very excited to welcome you to the Spring Run Challenge 2023 Athlete Briefing number 1. So the goal of this challenge is an 8-week challenge designed to improve the result of your 20-minute distance test. So we're going to talk a little bit about that here in a minute. And the way we're going to do that is go about it in a threefold approach this time. We're going to work VO2 max energy zone. We're going to work anaerobic capacity. We're going to work endurance. Those are going to be the three main target energy zones for this particular 8-week challenge. So let's start off and talk just very briefly about VO2 max. So this is a pace that you can run for probably about a maximum of 11 minutes. So it's on a RPE scale, or a rate of perceived exertion scale of 1 to 7, this is going to be about a 5. So pretty good high level effort. Anaerobic capacity is actually a little bit faster. So that on that RPE scale is going to be about a 6 out of 7. So something that you can maintain for maybe about 5 minutes maximum of high intensity running. And then just above that, which we are not touching into, but the only energy zone above zone 6 is that zone 7 neuromuscular power, which is for short bursts of effort, mostly reserved for sprinters. So not going to be touching on that one unless we got any 100-meter sprinters out there, and then we might loop back. So the purpose of including this style of running, or the purpose of this style of running in general, is to improve power, speed development, and improvement in running and economy. All things that are good for runners that compete and kind of enjoy and excel at different distances, all the way from the 100 meters to the marathon. Power, speed, and economy, crucial for all of us. So these energy zones in particular, VO2 max and anaerobic capacity, I love working with these on these energy zones with endurance athletes. And where I particularly like it is either at the very beginning of seasons, or I like it at the very kind of the off season, coming off of a peak season, kind of in between their peak goals and whatever is the next big thing. So as we enter spring, we tend to see those kind of longer endurance races, the half marathons, the marathons, they start to fall off of schedules as the weather warms up. And what we tend to see now, and what we want to start preparing for, are the shorter, faster races that come with late spring and summertime racing. So I really like my endurance racers, I mentioned, coming off of their A goals, their big, long endurance seasons, the half marathons, the marathons, etc., to take this time of the year as well and flip the script on their training, and like to get them to get into the shorter, faster, harder intervals, really focus on running fast for a change instead of just running long. So over the scope of the week, I've seen a lot of people have talked, both in the half marathon challenge and people leading into this challenge, about their testing, their recent testing, and how they didn't necessarily see a huge performance gain in their 20-minute test after a 10-week of the half marathon challenge. And I'm not entirely surprised by that. And the reason is we spent so much time, effort, and energy working on towards getting faster, or getting to the distance of the half marathon, or getting more efficient at the distance of the half marathon. Those energy zones aren't super applicable to the 20-minute distance test. So it doesn't mean that no one made progress. As a matter of fact, that's absolutely not the case. It just means that maybe some people didn't make the same progress that they would have by focusing on what we are going to focus on right here, which is that higher intensity, shorter intervals. And so this is also applicable in a very great way for athletes of all ability levels. Which you could certainly question, like, what on earth are you talking about? You just said it's high intensity, super fast training. I'm a little bit more of a novice runner. That's okay. It might be arguable, actually, that running 1 minute hard is a little bit easier than trying to come out and run 30, 45 minutes consecutively. And that's what we're going to have a lot of opportunity to do, is work on shorter, faster intervals. So you're going to be certainly pushing, you're going to be pushing yourself to a high, maybe a high level you haven't touched on in a long time, but it's very achievable for athletes at every skill level. So characteristics of this type of work, in particular the anaerobic style, I was kind of already talking about it a little bit, but short work periods at very high intensity followed by very generous recovery. So the effort is quite high in that interval, but the interval itself is relatively short with very generous recovery. So one more time, very approachable for athletes at every part of their running journey here. It's my always reminder, the website. So you've gotten your schedule. You probably got it in the email this morning. If not, it should be on your online portal. So as we're going through this, your schedule will remain there on that portal. Make sure you go in each week, check the box that you've completed the workout. What we all want to be working towards is a 100% completion percentage. I say it week after week after week, but the best way to be successful in endurance sport in general, much less these challenges, is to be striving after that 100% completion percentage. So go in, check the box, get the credit for doing your workouts. Also on that portal, your workouts for each week will be there. Over the scope of this challenge, your workouts will be there for the previous weeks until the end. At the end of the challenge, it kind of resets itself to whatever comes next. But as long as the challenge is continuing, you can go back, see your previous weeks, make sure to go in, check those boxes off, and before you move along. Now to our week 1 workout. Week 1 workouts. So we're starting off with our 20-minute distance test. So this is as far as you can run in 20 minutes. Not that complicated. You just start, you run for 20 minutes, you stop, you see how far you run. That's it. So it is a max effort test, however. So you want to warm up, you want to run as hard as you can, and you want to stop at that 20-minute mark and see how far you went. So this is an introductory baseline test. This is week 1 of the challenge. So it's impossible to do badly at this. As long as you start, run, or attempt, or go as hard as you can for 20 minutes and stop, you've completed it, you can check the box, you've done the assignment. That is what we're going for. We want to set a baseline. So it doesn't have to be a PR run. It doesn't have to be the greatest effort of your whole life. It's what you have today. And that's our baseline. And then we'll test again in 8 weeks. So just remember, you can't do it badly. They're all correct. So this test can be done indoors, outdoors, on a track, on a treadmill, on the road, on a hilly route, on a flat route, etc. All of those things work. Just pick the thing that's most available to you. And then do keep in mind that when you test again in 8 weeks, you probably are going to want to test on the same conditions that you're testing now in order to really get a sense of how much the improvement is. So if you test on a treadmill now, you'll probably want to test on a treadmill when we get into end of May. So if you're really preparing for outdoor running right now and think by end of May, you'll definitely be running outdoors, this might be an opportunity or certainly a situation in which you should take the test outdoors, give it a nice hard effort out there, see how your paces line up over the scope of this challenge here. I personally would take the test outside because that is where I am most comfortable running hard. I feel like I can run harder outside. However, there are plenty of athletes that feel much more comfortable indoors. And if that is you, it is okay. It is okay to test indoors. It is okay to test outdoors. Absolutely do the thing you are most comfortable with and you feel like it's going to set you up for success. So once again, it's all right. So why performance testing? Why do we go out of our way to do this? And simply, it is the most accurate way to assign your pacing based upon where you are right now. So this is, we all get caught up in this and we are all guilty of this. It's that we just kind of keep paces sometimes. We roll them around, or we've had the same paces for 6, 7, 8 years and haven't adjusted them based on current training, or even just 6 months, or even 2 months if things haven't been going great. Or we get nervous that we can't advance our paces from where they are right now. And it was a question I answered earlier today from someone who said, I don't think my paces have advanced. I've had the last 2 months off. And it quickly kind of responded. I was like, I don't think your paces have probably advanced either, but they might have come backwards. And so it's okay. It's, kind of this training journey is not a straight line. Paces go forward, paces come backwards. And knowing right now that you actually need to bring the paces backwards a little bit to meet you where you are is super, super important. Otherwise, you're making these workouts much harder than they should be, and they're going to be hard to begin with. So it's important to go through, do the testing, figure out exactly where you are right now, try to get those paces dialed in for yourselves because you'll get the most out of those workouts. You spend too much time and effort to show up, put in the work to not get the most out of it. So please do the test. Once again, this is our baseline test, so we don't need a big strategy. We don't need to overthink it too much. You just show up, you run 20 minutes, enter your results into the online portal, and you're going to have paces for the next 8 weeks. So we do want to prep for the test, however, a little bit. So we don't want to overthink it. We want to prepare. So we want to rest up, and give yourself a good shot at success. So try not to squeeze this thing in on a lunch break if you can. We want to make sure it's at the peak of your day where you're feeling ready to give a really nice hard effort. I've kind of mentioned this already, but don't overthink it. It doesn't have to be the perfect day. It doesn't have to be the perfect course. You don't need the perfect race shoes to go and do this. You just start and you run for 20 minutes and you stop, and then that's the whole workout. And finally, no holding back. So I know this can be a little bit intimidating, especially for kind of beginner runners. People don't have a history of testing or racing that much. We'll talk about that a bit more. But this does dictate your training paces. So while it doesn't have to be guns blazing straight from the start, it could be a thing that you ease into a little bit. One more time, we'll get back to that. But if you hold back too much or too conservative with the test, then your training paces are going to be a little bit under where really you should be right now. So give it a nice, hard, honest effort. That's all we're going to ask for. Give it a good hard go, and you'll, I think, be pretty happy with how things turn out. And it's option B, if you tested within the last 2 weeks, if you tested at either the end of the half marathon challenge or you kind of started week 1 of the half marathon challenge and came into here, you certainly can reuse that test and go into a progression run. It's just going to be a 30-minute progression run to roll through your paces. We've done this before in previous challenge. The objective for you at this point will be to reacclimate to the paces that you've touched on before. But I think most people this week should be coming in, hitting a test at the top of the week here. So good luck to you. Run number 2 of the week, 30-minute VO2 max interval run. So we are including here, and people who are in the winter run challenge are familiar with this, the 30-minute VO2 max interval, not that at all. The lunge matrix stretch. So this is a 3D mobilization to prepare you to get ready for your run. So there's a video link in there. This is not an optional part of the workout. The intensity of these workouts is going to be high immediately, so it takes longer to prepare your body. So we want to make sure that we're challenging you, but we're giving you all the tools. So it is now up to you to utilize those tools to make sure you're doing this workout. You want to learn it, you want to get good at it, and you want to be able to do it with your eyes closed, because we're going to do it week after week after week to continue to prepare your body to take on these workouts. So that's our lunge matrix stretch. We're going to do our 15-minute warm-up, so kind of a lengthy warm-up, if you will, inclusive of striders, to get ready to take on this higher load. Then we're going into our only 10-minute main sets. We've talked about stretching for about 5 minutes, 15 minutes of warm-ups, and now we're getting into a main set that's only 10 minutes long, 5 by 1 minute on, 1 minute off. So 5 minutes of high-intensity activity. That's all we're going for right here. It's going to be hard enough. This is, to be quite honest, a little bit of an introductory to our VO2 max pace here. So we have to learn it. We have to start to practice it a little bit. In the weeks to follow, we're really going to expand upon it and start to stretch it out over longer distances. So there's a relative high intensity, relatively short period of time. You're going to do great. You're going to love it. It's especially the people who are coming off half marathons, those long distance training journeys. Getting into the short, hard interval stuff is really what we want to be working on right now. And our final key run of the week, a long run, that 45 minutes endurance run. This will always be the best run of the week. You get to drop the structure, get to focus on just having fun, keeping things nice and easy. So always 45-minute endurance run, easiest run of the week. If you're one of those athletes that have been putting in longer, higher miles, you want to be putting in higher miles, feel free to extend this out to where you're comfortable with. We don't want to push you too far out of your intensity zone. And similar for beginner runners who haven't been doing 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 miles, 45 minutes is great. The point of, once again, of this challenge is to improve that 20-minute test over an 8-week span. So we don't necessarily need to go 60, 90, 2 hours to do that on that long run. 45 minutes can be great for now, and we'll actually peak that endurance run 60 minutes over the scope of this 8-week challenge. Speaking of challenges, we got our week 1 photo challenge, our need for speed. So share a photo or story about your VO2 max workout. We'll pick our favorite and send a little Team Whoopers gear your way. So make sure to tag @TeamWhoopers and @TeamWhoopersRunChallenge to participate. And so a few questions here that have come up via the Facebook group. So what is your advice if you need to test on the treadmill? I struggle with knowing what number to aim for. This is a great question. It's going to be super applicable for a ton of people. So I actually think there's some homework and there's some preparation to get ready for this test if you fall into this bucket and you really don't know where you should be starting. So one, I would say at the most simple level, you could start with a warm-up that takes you through those pace ranges. You could, kind of start at a level that feels easy to you, start at a level that maybe feels medium, and move to a level that might push you out of your comfort zone. Try to get a gauge of a pace that you think you might be able to sustain for a maximum of 20 minutes. Try to come in and out of it a few times and see how that feels. So you could incorporate that into the warm-up. You could do a bit of a progression run between now and Monday. Certainly you have some time before the start of the week. So try a 30-minute progression run where you start at easy pace, maybe move a little bit higher, then move a little bit higher, get to a point finally where you feel like you're pushing kind of near your max. And then once again, kind of keep a gauge of where you feel like a pace is that maybe you could sustain for 20 minutes at maximum effort. But that would be a great place, I would say, to start is do a little homework between now and Monday just to kind of get ready and find that baseline. So if you're going in blind, however, you're going to have to use an RPE scale, or RPE meaning rate of perceived exertion. So I wouldn't start it all the way at easy pace and move up. You need to warm up an easy pace and get your body ready. What I would do is start a little bit above easy pace, kind of an endurance race pace, if you will. This is usually kind of in and around what people would refer to as marathon pace. So a pace you could sustain for a long period of time. So you find that pace that you find comfortable with, and then over the scope of that 20 minutes, hopefully you can just advance a little bit, advance a little bit, advance a little bit. And if you hit a point where you feel like you can't advance, that's not a problem. That's great. At that point, you're hoping to sustain and hold that through the end of the 20 minutes. So hopefully those will be a couple good guidelines of where to get started if you're coming in and are feeling uncertain about how to do that test or where to start in it. But once again, I wouldn't start the test itself all the way down at easy pace. I would come in a little bit high. This will also be my opportunity to pick on Matt Wilpers. So don't do what Matt Wilpers did. When I called him, I talked to him when he did his test, and he said he started from a dead stop indoors on a treadmill and let the belt rev up. Don't do that. Just start with a gentle jog, go right into your run. But it's okay to carry a little bit of momentum into the start of this thing. It's gonna get you a couple seconds forward. I think as much as like 10 or 15, depending upon the machines. You can tell Matt, not to do that next time either. The next question here was, this is my second challenge, and for the winter challenge, I signed up for the 3-day per week, but I've increased to 4. So I've never really run more than 3 days per week, but want to up my weekly mileage. Any tips or consideration as I ease into running more often? So absolutely. And that's great. I love that you're wanting to run a little bit more, get an extra day on the week. In terms of increasing volume, actually adding a session is probably the best way to do that. Instead of just extending every run longer and longer and longer, extending a session would be my first piece of advice on how to get more volume into the week. So the best advice here is you want to be super light on that extra day. Super, super light. It's funny, I was talking with the ultra runner earlier about adding a lot of volume on and how to make sure to be as safe as possible in this scenario was to keep the effort super light on those runs. So we have our 3 things that we get to manipulate. We get our volume, we get our intensity, and we get our frequency. So you're adjusting frequency, which is in nature already adjusting volume. So we don't love always to tweak 2 things at the same time, but that kind of inherently go together. So the thing that you got to be super thoughtful of then is intensity. So we've got the intensity built into the midweek of the workout. So you want to make sure that that extra run is just easy peasy as pie. That is the best way to add on. Additionally, nail the recovery. This will kind of go against recovery, but inclusive of a warm-up. You've got to prepare your body with a nice warm-up. Then you want to go into a cool down, a nice easy cool down at the end, especially if you're harder sessions. Give your body a chance to kind of mellow out. Sleep, nutrition, mobility, etc. All of that stuff is going to help you be able to add that session, add that volume, and do so while healthy. So whenever your volume's increased, we're adding stress onto your body. So you have to kind of pay it back to your body and make sure that you're doing the work to allow it to handle that extra stress. Make sure to keep a little cross training into your schedule if you have it already. This is always my pet peeve. So cycling is not really a cross training. So we hear that all the time. We're like, you do some cross training. You're like, yeah, I cycle. But cycling is not a cross training activity for running. You're using the same musculature. You're in the exact same plane of motion. So it's great supplemental training, but it's really terrible cross training. So what I want from cross training is I want things that make you move differently, things that you're moving laterally potentially, working in a 3D plane of motion. So we're talking strength training, yoga, tennis, hiking, etc. Those are things that are great cross-training activities. So cycling is not bad. It's actually a great part. It can be incorporated into a runner's routine, but it's supplemental training, not cross-training. So when adding days of running, I want to make sure that we're still moving in 3D planes of motion. We're getting that actual cross-training time into the schedule. And finally, you probably want to really make sure that you're on good running shoes. If you're going to increase your frequency, if you're going to increase your volume, it gets more and more important to make sure that you're keeping a track on that, making sure that they're in good shape, making sure that the mileage hasn't gotten too high. It's pretty easy to track those things these days with Strava, Garmin, etc., and keeping them changed out on a regular basis. So these shoes are getting a little bit expensive. It's a lot cheaper than a trip to the doctor or PT's office. So we want to make sure that that kind of barrier in between your body and the ground is fresh. It's still providing the cushion that you needed. So a good pair of running shoes also will help. Well, friends, that is all for now. So as always, thank you so much for being here. I hope you have an incredible start to the Spring Run Challenge. I'm super excited for this one, and I can't wait to see you back here next week for week 2. Have a great one.